KwaZulu-Natal High Court in Pietermaritzburg will today hand down its ruling in the application by former President Jacob Zuma and French arms company Thales. The two applied for a permanent stay of prosecution in the corruption case. Now, the charges date back to 2005, and both Zuma and Thales blamed the state for unfair delays in the prosecution process. Zuma also argued that the decision to charge him was politically motivated, and during closing arguments, both legal teams of the applicants and the state blamed each other for the delays. At the last court appearance, Zuma's legal team also submitted new evidence in the application at the last minute. Now, proceedings are set to begin at 9:30 this morning. And for more on the story, we cross live now to our reporter Ayanda Mhlongo, and she is in Pietermaritzburg at the High Court there. Ayanda, good morning once again. And just to take a further look in anticipation of what is to happen in this court this morning. And of course, many people wondering, looking at the many eventualities, what would possibly happen if this morning we have a situation whereby charges are actually dropped. So if you can maybe just look at that and some other factors as well. Over to you, Ayanda.
All right, a very good morning to you, Sakina. Good morning to our viewers. Just earlier on when we were speaking with Leanne, maybe let me first start with this, Sakina, that we had said that there were, we had been told that the former president would not be in court this morning. But as soon as we had done earlier on with our first crossing, we then did receive confirmation that he is indeed going to be here in court. We have spoken to his protocol officer, that is Mr. Vugile Matabele, who has confirmed to us that the former president will indeed be here in court to hear, as you said, whether or not this corruption case against him will continue, or whether this will be the end of the road. And certainly just saying that this is a case, of course, that many people are interested to find out. As you know, often here there is hundreds of people that are outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court in support of the former president. And just today, of course, we're not expecting crowds outside the court, and one of the reasons for that was the fact that the court only announced on Wednesday that a decision would be announced today. So from his supporters, not enough time to mobilize, but they have said that some of the leaders within the ANC who can make it will be here in court in support of the former president. But of course, as you're saying there, Sakina, all eyes are going to be on the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We still are yet to find out whether or not it is going to be a single judge in the motion court who will just hand down the order, or whether or not we'll go back. The judgment will be read out by the three judges that heard this matter in June. And just very quickly now, once again, let me bring in our legal expert, Advocate Brian Jackson. Advocate, just very quickly, thank you so much again for staying with us. We're now speaking about what is expected here in court. But just before we get to that, the last time we were here, that was in May when the matter was heard, Advocate, there was that last-minute evidence that was brought in by the former president's defense team in a letter that they said supports their argument of political interference. Okay, the state coming out at that time, Advocate Wim Trengrove, arguing that new evidence could not be brought in that matter. Just explain to us in terms of that. Is the court likely to make a ruling on that evidence?
Thanks, Ayanda. In terms of the rules of courts, in the normal course, litigants are not allowed to introduce new evidence, and by new evidence I mean evidence that aren't on the papers, aren't in the affidavits. So when one does wish to do so in terms of litigation, one would need to bring an application to supplement one's papers. In the circumstances of how the evidence was brought up on the last occasion the matter was in court, you would have noted on the last day that both sides made submissions in relation to why it should be included into the evidence, and obviously conversely why it shouldn't be included in the evidence. So I'm of the view that in the judgment, the rejection or inclusion of the new evidence will be the first aspect that the judgments will deal with. And based on what the decision is in that regard, the court will then either incorporate it in its judgment, or excluded wholly. So that is what will happen. It will be the first thing that will be adjudicated on.
And of course, the decision. I think that is what everybody here, the former president himself, together with his co-accused French arms company Thales. What do we expect? Obviously, if he is granted, this brings an end to the case. If he is not granted this permanent stay, obviously the matter then goes to trial. But we've also been speaking about appeals, whether or not there is a possibility for any of the sides to appeal this judgment.
Yes. Ayanda, I have absolutely no disillusions that regardless of whichever party is victorious here today or successful, this matter will end up in the SCA. In terms of the Superior Courts Act, a matter where the court of first instance is a full court, that being 2 judges or more, any party wishing to appeal has to appeal directly to the SCA. You'll note and will be mindful of the fact that in this matter, the former president Jacob Zuma is fighting for his freedom. Conversely, for the state, this is a matter of public interest. So against that backdrop, I'm of the view that this matter, regardless of who's successful here today, will end up in the SCA.
All right, Advocate, thank you so much. There, Sakina Advocate Brian Jackson, of course, explaining to us what we expect today in court. But as he said, regardless of the outcome today and the judgment by the Pietermaritzburg High Court, he expects that there could be an appeal. But 9:30 is the time, Sakina, when the court will hand down its judgment in the matter of the former president Jacob Zuma. Back to you, Sakina.
Well, thank you so much. Our reporter Ayanda Mhlongo there outside the High Court in Pietermaritzburg.